And joining us now, Democratic Congresswoman Veronica Escobar, who represents a border district in Texas. Congresswoman, thanks for being here. What's your reaction to how this immigration crackdown all unfolded this weekend?
Well, Anna, all of this, we have to put it in context. This was political theater, much of this. This fight with Colombia, which was completely unnecessary. Colombia is an ally. President Biden worked very hard to build positive relationships with the president. They have been key partners and allies. And we have to also remember China, who is our competitor and an adversary, has been looking for ways strategically to get into Latin America and move closer to the United States. And by alienating our allies and attacking our allies, especially in Latin America, I think it is a not just strategic blunder, but it was pointless. Nothing really was accomplished. You know, as your prior guests mentioned, there's been ICE activity in the interior of the U.S. going on, never stopped. Deportation flights never stopped. In fact, 2024, last year, was historically an all-time high for deportation flights under President Biden. What's going on with Mexico and with Colombia that resisted the use of military planes is that I think they basically are saying, we had a process. We've been engaged in this process with you. Why are you using military planes? And to finally, to the point that one of your other guests mentioned about this making us less safe, we've got to remember that all of this bluster and all of this political theater that, it truly isn't making us safer, because when you're using assets that are trained and deployed for other purposes, whether it's the U.S. military or whether it's the U.S. Marshals or whether it's the FBI or any other federal agency, when you're having them focus on these moments that allow Trump to show he's a strong man of sorts, they're basically taking their eye off the ball of what they're trained and what they are supposed to do for our national security. So this isn't making us safer, but it is feeding red meat to Donald Trump's base.
And Trump is getting what he wants. You talk about the way he treated an ally, but it worked out the way Trump wanted it too. He got what he wanted. So does that just further incentivize him to behave this way and to handle, whether it's an ally or an adversary, with a response like we just saw?
He got what he wanted for now, but here's the challenge over the long term. And I think, for Trump and his supporters, it's always about the sugar rush, the immediate high of, see, we won, and our guy bullied the other guy. But over the long term, Americans lose. And we lose because, number one, we need those allies and we need stability, especially in neighboring countries. A tariff war, trade war, guess what that does? It doesn't just drive up the prices for American consumers, but it also drives up migration. When Donald Trump creates instability in neighboring countries, or when their economy begins to flounder a bit because of tariffs or for whatever other reason, that's when we see migration increase. So there's a consequence to all of this. And again, alienating our allies in Latin America, it opens the door wide open for China to come in and say, you're not able to count on the U.S. for trade or for an alliance, but guess what? You can count on us. We lose, all of us, in the long term.
So let's talk about what Congress can do, your role here. Before Trump took office, Tom Homan had said there was no price tag on this immigration agenda, and now a massive price tag has emerged in the $100 billion range. Here's Republican Senator Lindsey Graham on that.
We need to give Tom Homan the money now to execute the plan that he's come up with. And without congressional funding, this is going to hit a wall. So we need to do two bills in reconciliation. The first bill should be $100 billion for the border, $200 billion for national security. Put those points on the board, give Tom the tools he needs to execute a mass deportation strategy.
What's your reaction to that proposed sum, one, and what's the Democrats' play here?
I think number one, something that is interesting to me about that clip is that there's an acknowledgement that there were not adequate resources, in terms of their perspective, provided for enforcement activity, for border policy, et cetera. Just as a reminder, the Biden administration frequently asked Congress for more resources, and it was almost always the Republicans. In fact, it was always the Republicans who stood in the way of President Biden having the resources that he needed. And yet they would turn around and blame President Biden for what was happening at the border, despite their rejection of his request for resources. Tom Homan also told the Republican conference to essentially manage their expectations because he did not have the resources to carry out everything that Donald Trump promised, which is why.
Respectfully, though, do you anticipate Republicans and Donald Trump getting what they want here?
They've got a tightrope to walk. The government funding runs out in about 6 weeks. There are some Republicans looking for deep cuts in exchange for the massive tax breaks they're giving to the billionaire class. And they want to invest billions of dollars in the mass deportation, which, by the way, will also drive up costs when we lose hardworking immigrants that have been here for decades, expect prices to go through the roof. This is a very, very precarious tightrope that Republicans are walking.
Okay.
We'll have to wait and see if they're successful.
Democratic Congresswoman Veronica Escobar, thank you so much for joining us, and hope you'll come back soon.